Candace Jackson, and welcome to this video series. I'm so glad that you chose to come along and watch. I want to share with you my journey with endometriosis, my journey to endometriosis, and the purpose of this series is kind of two-part. I'll talk about the condition of endometriosis and kind of shed some light on what that is, as well as trying to remove the stigma that so many women face, with the condition. The other part is my past struggles with fear and how fear and endometriosis eventually collide in my story, in my journey. Fear has been very interwoven into my story from childhood, and it led me to, my condition with endometriosis. And I just want to share with you this journey that I've walked on and how they both ended up colliding at one point, my fear, my endometriosis. I also want to give others hope that you don't have to just struggle with this condition and go throughout life feeling debilitated, but I found hope in this series with my faith in God and how He exchanged my fear for faith. I remember one of my first experiences with fear as a child. It started at my family home around 8 or 9 years old. My family lived close to a highway, and at night I remember hearing the loud booms on the highway as the trucks were going past. And to me, as a child, it sounded like that there were these huge beings plodding down the highway on their way to finish me. I just remember that so distinctly, and I remember feeling overwhelmed with fear. I remember my heart started racing, my heart was pounding, I would start hyperventilating, I would cry until I finally could muster up the courage to go into my parents' bedroom for the night. But that was one of the first times I experienced gripping fear, and that fear from then on would seem to follow me throughout my life and interweave itself throughout every decision that I made from then on out. In my teenage years, when it came to my cycle, they were pretty normal. I just had occasional cramps. They weren't very painful. My cramps weren't very painful at all. It wasn't until about 24, 25 years old when I started to notice a significant change in my monthly cycles. The cramps became so severe, and I would find myself doubled over in pain a lot of times. I would have to medicate days in advance before my cycle came on just to be able to deal with the cramps. I remember around this time, it was 2010, I believe, I felt a knot in my pelvis. I had just come out of the shower, and I just felt a sort of presence in my pelvis. And so I just lie down and just felt, my pelvis to see what it was. And I felt a small, tangerine-sized knot. And at first I was confused. I was wondering, what was it? How did it get there? And I didn't think too much of it. But instead of going to these big extremes, like, oh my God, I have cancer, or something really serious is going on, I started to make excuses for its presence, excuses for how it got there. I started thinking to myself, well, maybe I bumped into something and it formed a knot, and that's why it's there. It'll go away soon. Or then I thought, maybe it was just another symptom that was showing itself, since my cycles had started to change. Months had passed since the first time I felt the knot in my pelvis and decided to pretend that it wasn't there or decided that it would go away. Something changed one day. I'd say 5 or 6 months later, something changed. And I felt this sharp, stabbing pain radiate through the knot in my pelvis. And I was on my cycle. And so again, I thought, okay, this must just be another symptom. So I grabbed my stomach and I tried to just take it. I tried to just suck it up and, let the moment pass. Then a few moments later, another surge of pain came through the knot in my pelvis, and this one brought me to my knees. And I couldn't do anything but cry. I had told my mother months before about the knot that I had found. I reassured her that nothing was wrong. I didn't need to go get checked out because it would go away on its own. This particular day, when my mom saw me doubled over on the couch, she didn't need any more convincing. She told me that it was time. It was time to go to the hospital, whether I liked it or not. So I put up a little fight. I pushed, not to go, and I told my mom that one of the reasons I didn't want to go was because it was going to be expensive. I did not personally want to pay $200 to go to the ER. I could save that money and put it somewhere else. But it wasn't a choice. My mom couldn't stand to see me crying, in pain. So she picked me up with the help of my dad and helped me to the car. And we went to the emergency room. The level of pain was excruciating. And again, I had just decided to deal with it and let the moment pass. But my parents thought otherwise. So we went to the emergency room.
So after you get to the emergency room, they get you to the back and everything. Describe what happens in the conversation with the nurse and kind of the feelings you had from that and everything. Really describe kind of that.
So I get to the emergency room and I didn't have to wait very long, which was a good thing. I didn't want to be there anyway. I immediately went straight to the back, and the nurse came in and was taking my blood and was telling me that they were going to get to the bottom of why I was feeling the way I was feeling. While I was waiting for my blood work to come back, I was ordered to go get a MRI, which is a scan that would take a picture of, my pelvis and see what was, going on inside there. My mom and I are waiting in the room that the doctor had prepared for us. And while I was waiting, I felt my usual fearful self start to rise. What is it? What is going on? Why am I in so much pain? I don't want to be here, period. And finally, the nurse came in, not the doctor. The nurse came in, and I remember her sitting down next to me and taking my hand with such a sad look on her face. And I remember looking at her, wondering, why is she so sad? What is she about to tell me? And she takes my hand and she starts saying, well, Candace, we did find a mass in your pelvis. In my brain, right, I knew there was a mass there. And then she told me, she said, we found a mass and it could be cancer. Girl, what? What do you mean it could be cancer? I was stunned. I couldn't believe that she had just told me what she thought it was without having the information in front of her. Without knowing what it was, she still sat and told me that it could be cancer. That should have terrified me, but it didn't. I distinctly remember in that moment being overwhelmed with this sense of peace that seemed to flood the hospital room that I was in. It was so different than what I had been used to growing up. I would usually go into panic mode. I would usually start hyperventilating. I would usually start running scenarios through my head as to how I got here, why I'm here, and starting to feel sorry for myself. But something else happened. This enormous amount of peace came over my body. I didn't feel the pain in that moment. I didn't feel the radiating pain through my pelvis. All of it stopped. And I looked at my mom, and we both shared this look, this calm, peaceful look, as if to say, everything is okay. You know, it's amazing how in life's terrifying moments that God can show up and reveal himself in those moments. So instead of that fear that I would usually feel, God came in that room and exchanged it for this overwhelming sense of peace.